Krishna Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar. Hare Hare.
All for coming, and I will introduce. Like to by Irmala Devi Dasi. I thought Bhakti Vijnana Goswami's writings were the best in the entire book. He has a deep and clear you he is a very nice person. Like one of these and he was Prabhu also came with us. Jan and Harikesh were college mates, Harikesh Maharaj, and Japa and Bhakti Vijnana Goswami were college roommates when they both met the devotees when Prabhupada was still on the planet. And Bhakti Vijnana Goswami wanted to offer his homage because one of the books he translated, he was working for the BBT. I'm not even sure at that time it was the BBT, but he got Prabhupada's Lilamrita and he translated it. So, you know, and he wanted to thank Satsvarup Maharaj for bringing Prabhupada's presence. He said, even though you weren't there personally, you know, you actually came through that book. And as I understand, at that time, the production was, after he would translate it from the English to the Russian, then someone else would write it. And that's how the books were produced. And we were talking before, actually, these devotees made such sacrifice. Japa was in prison for 3.5 years, and really tortured. And in the case, they told him after his case was there that, look, just say that you're not a Hare Krishna, that you don't believe this, then go back and do what you want, but just say that. And he said no. So that's called faith. Faith means to trust in something sublime. That's why one of the qualities in bhakti is utsaha nischaya dharya. You're patient. And what is that patience? What is that confidence? The confidence is, this is so good, this bhakti is so good, that whatever trouble I have to undergo is a little price to pay. So imagine all the way coming once to Moscow, and his presence on the planet through his books, and then the people he inspired, how much Brahmanda Brahmate Konya Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhakti Lata Bij, how much that Bhakti Lata Bij, that faith, that confidence, that they could tell him, we'll let you go, just say no Hare Krishna, say this or say that. He said no. He said no. This is so good. This is what bhakti is. It's so good. Nishna, I'll do it all the time. It's so good. Anartha Vritti, I'll give up the things that have no value to it.
This is Rati's idea.
Well, it's actually in the
I didn't know you were a bus driver.
Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Law of Programs. It's not an official program until Gail. Okay. It's so good. So can you imagine the potency and the faith that's put into people's hearts to make that kind of sacrifice? So this will be the program today. You know that you hear me speak regularly, so that when we get a special guest, I like to give them the stage, but say something beforehand. And this is the last program in New York City, and I can say we had some really great guests. Huh? Questions and answers with Jayadvaita Maharaj. Then that discussion with Simon Haas. Simon Haas is a devotee author, and his books at presenting Krishna consciousness in a contemporary way are probably the best. And a lot of the people here were studying them. And then I found out that we invited this famous speaker, Simon Haas, and then they found out he used to live with me in Vrindavan. When he was 17 years old in our room and things. But he was such a wonderful Vaishnava. Now Bhakti Vijnana Goswami. So the initial subject that I wanted to talk on, I asked Maharaj, what do you want to talk about? He said, just give me a topic. So it'll be basically the same topic. You know, every year, those of you that have come recently don't realize your fortune now. But about 20 years ago, there was nothing happening in New York or in North America, practically speaking. And if I wanted to speak, I have to make my own festival. So every year I make this festival, the Panihati Festival, you know, which deals, and we would tell that story, and it's really the story of Raghunath Das Goswami. So I thought I really hadn't told that story. So I would kind of tell it today, but Maharaj is here, so we're going to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to talk about the beginning of that story, which really leads to the subject of Prayojana Tattva. In philosophy, there are three categories. One is called Sambandha Gyan. We know that basically every philosophy has a description of reality, and it should have a means of knowing it is true, an epistemology, an evidence, a pramana. So basically, establishing reality. Then there's Abhideya Gyan. Abhideya Gyan means there has to be a description of how you realize reality, because every philosophy is to realize the truth, whatever you espouse as your metaphysics or your truth. So it has to be an Abhideya Gyan. And then the last part of philosophy is Prayojana Gyan. Your goal, what is the result of realizing the truth? So all philosophy should fit into these categories. And of course, in the philosophy of Bhakti, our Sambandha Gyan, it is God and God's energies. That's what actually exists. And because God is a person, the Abhideya Gyan, the means of realizing God, is Bhakti, or devotion. We were discussing that in the morning. I was giving class on the way down here. You don't understand a person by analysis. You understand a person by relationship. So you want to understand God, there's a limit to how far you can understand God by just analysis. There has to be an element of mercy. There has to be an element of relationship. So bhakti is our means of realizing. And the priyojana gyan, what is the result of doing so? The result of doing so is not just understanding the absolute truth, but feeling the absolute truth, feeling your relationship with the absolute truth. And that feeling, the ultimate love between the living entity and God, that energy is called prema. Prema pumartha mahana. So that is actually the goal. And who is the priyojana acharya? Who is the teacher for that? That's Raghunath Das Goswami. So now I'll just give a little background of the Antya Lila. The chapter of the Antya Lila, I think, is the glories of Raghunath Das Goswami. But the beginning doesn't have anything about Raghunath Das Goswami. If you had like a, what is it called, like a Google map, you know, you wanted to like, you can not only focus in on a particular place, but a particular time. So imagine that. This is like the Maha Google map. And it goes back in time. And then it goes to Jagannath Puri. And then it goes to where Lord Chaitanya is, the house of Kasi Mishra. And then it goes into this little cave room, which is the Gambhira. And that's where Lord Chaitanya spent the last 18 years of his life, but I believe this Antya Lila, the last part of Lord Chaitanya's life, which begins when he's 30 years old, because he only lives to 48. So the last part, the Antya Lila, it's divided into two parts. The first part, I'm not sure if it was 12 or 6 years, the other one, but the first part, he's more with the devotees, and then gradually, in the last 12 years or 6 years, he's more and more in what's called Nirjan Bhajan. Practice Nirjan without any people. If you really want to do Bhajan, it has to be not with so many people. You know, kind of alone. So he's in this cave-like room, which you can see to this day. And you're brought in there, and what's happening in that cave-like room, he's realizing God by feeling God, by having a relationship with the holy name of Krishna. And to deepen that relationship and deepen that absorption. Because in the Gita it says, Yoginam api sarvesham madgatena taratmanam shradhava bhajate yomam sameyuktamata. Of all yogis, he who worships me with faith and devotion is the highest of all. Because the absorption is greatest in love or relationship. And the deeper the relationship, the deeper the absorption. And the deeper the absorption, the more you'll feel that energy of love, which is the goal. So this is Lord Chaitanya is showing us the process. I should mention at the end of his life, he's there and he's focused. And to keep that focus, he does two things. He hears the songs and stories of the person whose name he is chanting. So he's chanting the name of Krishna. He's in the mood of Radha. He's chanting the Hare Krishna mantra in her mood of calling to Krishna and developing that love by hearing the stories and songs of Krishna. Basically, Ramananda Roy and Swarup Damodar, his most confidential associates. Ramananda Roy is more telling the stories. Swarup Damodar is more telling the song, singing the songs. And that love is being communicated and felt. And this is so important in our tradition, that these perfectly composed stories of Krishna that communicate that love. This is called Rasa Shastra. There's Nataka Shastra. There's a Shastra on how you compose these dramas, these stories about Krishna so perfectly that the love that you're trying to represent becomes incorporated in the stories in such a way that you feel it. I was talking with Maharaj, I think the day before yesterday, how Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami wrote a drama. And we're talking, it took him almost 30 years to write the drama. And there was no word processing. And when he wrote it, you had one shot on the bark with the squeezed rose, ink. And you got to carve it first in the bark and then put the, so it was all in his mind, but it especially took him a long time because there are so many rules of poetry. There's so many, to compose something in a way that it appropriately represents the love that you're expressing with Krishna. And even we know that at that particular time, there weren't even that many things written. Anarpita Charicharam Karunaya Vitirna. Anarpita, never before given. Anarpita Charimchara, for a long time. Anarpita Charimchara Karunaya Vitirna. But at the mercy in this Kali Yuga, Samarpiyatam Unatojvalavasam, this type of special love of Radha wasn't really so accessible and given. So there weren't even that many things written. So people were writing them, and it was such a technical science to do it properly that Swarup Damodar would get the books. And when he would get the books, he would check them. Because if they weren't proper, they wouldn't invoke the right feeling. Just like if any of you are cultured. Okay. I'll say it another way. A cultured person, he has a particular taste. In Sanskrit, it's rasika. He's a connoisseur. So when he eats, you just don't give him anything. It's got to be proper. And when they see drama or poetry, it's not you just write anything. It has to be proper to get the appreciations. So Lord Chaitanya was a Rasika Vaishnava. He was a connoisseur of love and devotion, and they would bring it to him. And therefore, by hearing this, Gaur Govinda Maharaj, our illustrious godbrother, Rasika Vaishnava, he wrote that book, Embankment of Separation, and he described that this flow of prema, or love, which is the goal, is like a river when it flows between the soul and God in their relationship. And for a river to flow strongly, it needs two embankments. If one embankment is weak, then the river will go towards the plain and the force. And similarly, prema needs union and separation. So we see there that sometimes Lord Chaitanya, in these deep, deep feelings of separation, they felt that the embankment of separation was so high, right? That they would, and to pacify his feelings, they would compose and sing songs of union. And then after a while, he was getting in the mood of union. I can't use the term familiarity breeds contempt. It doesn't exactly apply here, but somehow or other, the love, and then they would do separation. And then what else would he do? He would worship the form of the person whose name he was chanting. And Jagannath is the form of Krishna, in the highest love in mood of separation from Radha. So it's the form of Krishna that has the most love for Radha. So he wanted that form. So in this way, it was very, very deep. And why is this at the beginning? Because we're going to hear the story of Raghunath Goswami, and this is where he's going to end up. And we all know that in sadhana, the definition of sadhana is the things you do to achieve bhava. You cannot have a practice without a goal. So there has to be some understanding of the goal for your practice, because you have to have an objective or goal as a practice. And we know later in the story what happens is Raghunath Das Goswami, after he's tested, renunciation is not cheap. It's not he comes and say, oh, shave your head and put on saffron. Now you're a renunciate. Lord Chaitanya pushes him back. Let him test his renunciation. You're not just coming because you're a failure. And then we see how expert he is in material dealings. It's not that he couldn't be successful in the world. And then when he finally leaves and he goes to Lord Chaitanya humbly for instructions, and Lord Chaitanya inspires him with this priyojana, that this should be your goal. You should live this and you should teach this. So now Bhakti Vijnana Goswami will explain more about priyojana and the story and whatever inspires it.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Name Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurani Prasarane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Ashtatadhishatane Panchakalpataruyasya Kripa Sindhu Devacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Ajanulambita Vujo Kanakavadatu Sankirtanai Kabitaro Kamalaya Taksha Vishwambaro Dvijavaro Yugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavrataro Yantah Pravishya Mama Vachinamam Prasuttam Sanjeevayat Akila Shakti Darasvadamna Anyam Shahasta Charana Shravana Tvagadi Pranandana Bhagavate Purusharata Svasyastu Vishwasya Kala Prasidatam Dayantu Bhutani Shivam Mithodya Manascha Vadram Vajadata Doksaja Aveshyatam Namati Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So first of all, I would like to thank Dhanurdhara Maharaj for inviting me here for this program, and all of you for coming. In the beginning, I'd like to beg forgiveness from you for any inconsistency or whatever I may say, but I will try in the mood of service to Maharaj to speak something. in this very elevated topic, which is difficult to speak about, because in order to speak about something you have to realize this. And I definitely cannot claim myself that I realized the goal. But for my own purification, it's extremely important for us to be reminded about the goal. We all know and we all use in our cars this GPS system, which is global positioning system. And in global positioning system, first of all, you have to understand where you are, right? Before making the route, you have to know where you are. Without knowing where you are, you cannot make the route. So that's Sambandha Gyan. Sambandha Gyan is the knowledge about your nature, where I am, who I am. That's the starting point of our journey. Why we have to be so firmly established in this Sambandha Gyan? Because otherwise the goal will be flimsy. It will not be really fixed. And then for global positioning system, you need to go the goal. Basically, in this global positioning system, you need to go where you are, what is the goal, and then it will show you the route, and it will also show you the obstacles on the route. It's a common Vedic knowledge that to achieve the goal, you need to know who you are, the Sambandha Gyan. You need to know the goal, you need to know the process or the route by which you have to go, and you need to know the obstacles on the way. I remember once in Germany we were driving, and there was GPS, and we were in a hurry to reach to the airport, and this stupid GPS would always bring us to the place where the road was blocked because there was some work was going on. And as much as we wanted to go some other route, the GPS said, no, go this way. So this GPS didn't know the obstacles. So these four things should be known. And that's called GPS, which means Guru Parampara system. So Guru has to really clearly understand who you are, what is the starting point, where we are starting our journey, where we should reach, what is the route to this goal, and what are the obstacles on the way. And the second point is prayojana. Usually we say Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana, but to really understand what is Abhideya, or what is the means, what is the route, you have to know the goal first. Because especially in the modern culture, this is the culture where people don't know the goal, but are very good in establishing the means. They always answer the question how, how to reach the moon. Not why to reach the moon, but how to reach the moon. That we can solve. Why? That's a big mystery. People usually don't really know why they're doing something, but they're very good at determining how they do something. Therefore, it's extremely essential for us to always be reminded again and again and again, what is our goal? And goal, it's synonymous to the meaning. If we are to find out the meaning of our life, it means we should know the goal. Because the goal and the meaning is the same. If you don't know the goal, it means that you have no meaning. There is this funny story in Alice in the Wonderland when she first gets there in this Wonderland, and she sees this cat, Cheshire cat, and she asks Cheshire cat, and she sees few roads going, and she says, which road I should go? And the cat says, depending on what your goal is. And she says, I don't know what my goal is. And then he says, then you can take any road. It's a common sense, but very often people lacking. The common sense is not so common nowadays. And therefore, these teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about the means and the goal, sadhya and sadhana, the sadhya comes first, the goal comes first, then only sadhana. Therefore, when they met with Ramananda Roy, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked his question, please quote me this sloka about sadhana, about sadhya, about the goal of life. What should be the goal of life? And of course, the goal of life is entirely dependent on who we are, because depending on who we are, correct understanding of who we are, the goal will be different. So, this is the little introduction to this very difficult topic of the goal of life. But again, even though it's difficult, we have to be reminded again and again what is the goal of life. And Raghunath Das Goswami is our Prayojanacharya. In his life is teaching us how to be established in the goal and how ultimately we can reach the goal. When great liberated souls come to this world to perform their pastimes in this world, they do it with a purpose to teach us. Sometimes, of course, we glorify them, they are great liberated souls, but even though they are great liberated souls, they still undergo the same process to teach us what we are supposed to do in our life. And therefore, usually their lives are difficult. Sometimes you may ask why Prabhupada's life was so difficult. Why Krishna didn't arrange his glorious triumph earlier in life. Why he had to undergo so many difficulties to teach us. And in the similar way, Sanatana Goswami's life, Rupa Goswami's life, and especially the life of Raghunath Das Goswami was full of difficulties. And the first difficulty was that he was born in a very rich family. That was the first problem which he encountered.
I should only have such.
It was, it was not easy, believe me. To be born in a middle class family, it's okay. But to be born in a very rich family, it's a hell. Because he was so cherished, his father and his uncle were very rich people, so much so that they had an income, unbelievable income, 2 million gold coins a month. It's not $2 million a month, which would be not bad either. It's gold coins. It's not this, paper, little paper things, which is called dollars. It's 2 million gold coins. When Raghunath, there is a description, then when Raghunath Das Goswami, little boy, wanted to go out for walking, there was 3 palanquins waiting for him. Why 3 palanquins? Because there were 3 doors in the house, so that and they didn't know which door he would exit the house. So by each door there was a palanquin waiting for him. And when he would say, I want to walk, they say, no, you can't. You're a prince. You have to be in a palanquin. It's not easy to be heir of a very rich family. He was very restricted in all his activities, but there was one blessing in his life. And that's the first lesson which he is to teach us how to reach the goal. When he was some 8 years younger than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So when he was maybe 6 years old or 5 years old, nearby in the same village, Adi Saptagram, where his parents were living and he lived in a beautiful mansion, there were two very pious and religious and devoted brahmanas living. Yadunandanacharya, who later will become his guru, and Balaramacharya. Balaramacharya is a disciple of Haridas Thakur. Even though he's a brahmana himself, he accepted Haridas Thakur as his spiritual master, which in itself speaks something about his level of advancement. To accept a Muslim in that strict Hindu society at that time as a guru, and by a brahmana, that's something unheard of. So, and he was living nearby, and he was a good friend with the parents of Raghunath Das Goswami. And when Haridas Thakur came to visit him, he begged him to stay in his house for some time. He built a little cottage for Haridas Thakur, and Haridas Thakur, who was a very poor person, he only had his loincloths. He was living in this cottage which was big enough to sit, and he was always chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And he chanted 300,000 names a day, which took all of his time. 300,000 names means 192 rounds, which is a little more than you probably chanted. So he was chanting all the time, and he would not eat before he chanted his quota. Every day he was just first things first. That's the slogan, right? So first his things first. First he would chant his 90 or 192 rounds, and then he would eat a little bit in the evening. And in this way he spent his life. So Balaramacharya, please listen, that's very important. He came to Govardhan Majumdar, father of Raghunath Das Goswami, and he said, there is a very nice saintly person, and he's living nearby, and I want that he would bless your son. And of course they are very pious people, and they know very well that the well-being of a person is entirely dependent on the blessings of saintly people. And Govardhan Majumdar, he became very excited. He said, yes, that's exactly what I want. I want my little son to be blessed by this saintly person, because the saintly person can give you long life, can give you health, can give you, by his blessings, can give you wealth, can give you so many things. So the father of Raghunath Das Goswami, he arranged, very rich gifts for this saintly person. Silken clothes and, rice and gold and everything. And he sends his little boy together with these gifts to the house of Balaramacharya where Haridas Thakur lives. And then Balaramacharya comes and says, so my dear spiritual master, Guru Maharaj, please come out, see, there are some nice gifts given for you by one nice person, Govardhan Majumdar. And Haridas Thakur comes out and he sees all these riches and he starts laughing. And he starts laughing and laughing. He just couldn't contain himself because he found it so funny. He thought, why do I need this? What will I do with all this stuff? What is the use of all this silken clothes and everything else when I can live without this? And then Balaramacharya, he shows this little boy, Raghunath Das Goswami. He points out and he says, this is the son of this rich person who sent to you all these gifts. And please bless him. And Haridas Thakur looks at little Raghunath Das Goswami, who is little Raghunath at that time, very cute little boy. He looks at him and says, oh yeah, I will bless him. Let him be detached. So that was his blessings. And that's actually the beginning of his spiritual journey. Because when we are too attached, when we have hope, ceaseless hope to be happy in this material world, there is no question of having real spiritual journey. I see this little slogan on the wall, may the bridge I burn light the way. So, that's exactly what happened at this particular junction in little boy's life, and he was blessed by a great saint. May you be detached. May you burn all the bridges, and the fire of these bridges would light your way. And when they came back, with Balaramacharya came back with this little boy to Govardhan Majumdar. Govardhan Majumdar asked him, did he bless him? And he said, yes, he blessed him. What was his blessing? And he said, his blessing was that your son will own the whole world. And of course, Govardhan Majumdar, he looked at his brother and he said, oh, did you hear this? We only own this little village, and our son will own the whole world. And you can only own the whole world if you're detached. If you're detached, the whole world belongs to you. So since that time, receiving the blessings of Haridas Thakur, Raghunath Das Goswami, his behavior completely changed. He developed very strong spiritual desires, and he started chanting. Because you actually can start chanting only by the blessings of a saint. This little boy, he started always chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's a nice thing to receive the blessings of Haridas Thakur. It's not an ordinary thing. So, and then what happened when Raghunath Das Goswami was 12 years old, he became a teenager, and he's, growing up in a very nice way there. But Balaramacharya, because he wanted so much, he was well-wisher of the whole family, and especially for this heir of the family, Raghunath Das Goswami, he again came to Govardhan Majumdar, his father, and he says, there is an amazing saint now staying for a few days in Shantipur, and your son has to go and see him. And this amazing saint was of course Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. After receiving sannyas, he was tricked by Nityananda Prabhu, and Nityananda Prabhu brought him again to Bengal, to Shantipur, where he was staying. And Balaramacharya, by all means, knowing that the blessings of Haridas Thakur are there upon the head of Raghunath, he wanted him to meet Lord Chaitanya himself. So the palanquins were there, ready, the servants were there, the whole procession went to Shantipur from Adi Saptagram, which is maybe one day journey, not far away, upstreams, no, downstreams actually, of Ganga. So, or maybe upstreams. Yeah, upstreams. And when they came, and when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for the first time saw Raghunath, he became so pleased with him. And he also gave him blessings. He said, may you obtain Lord Krishna. May Lord Krishna come into your heart and catch your attention. And that was another lesson which Raghunath Das Goswami is teaching us by his life. First you have to get the blessings of the saint, and after getting the blessings of the saint, you will get the blessings of Lord himself. Lord Chaitanya himself becomes pleased with you. What happened with Raghunath? Raghunath became so humble. naturally humble. Usually, when you're born in such a rich environment, you are naturally proud. But Raghunath was painfully humble. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw his humility. And humility, as we will see, again, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will give him his personal instruction, and he will say that humility is the prerequisite condition to be engaged in bhajan. Because unless you're humble, you cannot really concentrate your mind on your goal. To be fixed in the goal, you have to have certain qualities, and the main quality is, of course, the peacefulness of the mind, but the peacefulness of the mind and humility are inseparable. If you're proud, you're always disturbed. Did you notice? I notice because I'm always proud, so, and therefore I'm always disturbed. If you're proud, you're always very sensitive. Who speaks about you what? Who, who praises you, who doesn't praise you, who kind of, diminishes your prestige or whatever it is. But if you're humble, you're peaceful because you don't care. What do they speak? Do they speak praise, or do they condemn you? You don't care really. All their praises and condemnation just miss the target because you're so small. If you're big, it's very easy to hit the target because you're so big. If your ego is big, it's just and ego is usually, when it's big, it's very sensitive. If you touch the ego, it's like explosion is there. You cannot really concentrate your mind if you're proud. No way, no way, no way. You will always be disturbed. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw this, and moreover, Balaramacharya, through his connections, he arranged remnants of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's food to be given to Raghunath Das Goswami. Little Raghunath, who was 12 years old, and when he took the food, which was the remnants of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he fainted. He lost his consciousness because the effect was so powerful and so profound upon his heart and his consciousness. So he didn't want to leave Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He stayed there 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and then his father became worried. Why he's not coming back? He's sending another, gang of 10 people saying, you bring my son back. And they come and they see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and they take part in his kirtan. Every night in the house of Advaita Acharya, the kirtans was there. And all these people will take part in the kirtan, and they didn't want to leave. So this party which was sent to get Raghunath back, they would stay in Shantipur, and they didn't come back. So he would send another party and another party, and he sent a lot, and nobody came back. He thought, what's going on there? It's this black hole, I'm sending somebody, nobody comes out. So he decides to go himself. He goes to Shantipur himself, and he sees crowds of people. Because at that time all the people from Navadvip came to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who received sannyas, and everyone is in complete ecstasy, everyone is intoxicated out of love of God, and they're going, and they're completely mad. And this Govardhan Majumdar, rich person, he goes and he just, can you imagine to be in a crowd of completely drunken people, drunken with the love of God, and he becomes really worried. He doesn't know what to expect. And what happens with his little son? Ultimately he comes and he sees Lord Chaitanya, and he himself doesn't want to leave. He himself says, okay, I need to get my son, but I don't want to leave from here. Anyway, for some time they stayed, and that was, of course, the big mistake on the part of Govardhan Majumdar, because from that day on, his son, when the day when they came back to the house from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, And he was sleeping with his wife, and Raghunath Das Goswami, young boy, 12 years old, in his room, the Govardhan Majumdar, he hears a sound at night. And he doesn't know what to do. He takes his sword and he runs to the sound, and he calls his servants, and he sees his little son is trying to open the window to run away from home. And since that time, practically every night Raghunath wanted to run from home. You know, sometimes he would sleep, but most of the nights he wanted to escape from home, because his longing to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so strong. He couldn't understand, what am I doing here? This amazing person who is in complete bliss of love of God is nearby, somewhere in Jagannath Puri. What am I doing here? I'm wasting my life. What am I doing here in New York? You know, he's there. I have to run. I really have to run there. What is the use of my life if I'm just rotting here? So his longing was so strong that ultimately, you know, the guards were there. 12 guards were there day and night, guarding him, and he's still trying to run away. Of course, even before that, he was trying to run away, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him, you stay home, you know, you don't be crazy. Time will come. Actually, no, that was the second meeting. So 6 years passed. Raghunath Das Goswami is 18 years old. His mother, because she was so worried that he is completely detached from the world, she decided that let him get married. And they brought a beautiful wife to him who was beautiful and obedient, and you know, she was not American. She was a Bengali wife. It's a different species of wife. She was very obedient and very nice. Knew how to cook. And still he was running away. Still he was running. Ultimately, his mother became so desperate. She came to the father and she said, let's chain our son. Because despite of all these guards, he's still running. And the father, because he knows, the father knows, father himself saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he kind of wants to run himself. He's in the same condition. He said, you want to chain him? We already brought the best chain. It is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, Mithuna Agara, that the best chains in this world is the chain of attachment between male and female, between man and woman. You know, we brought the best chain, and he still is not. You know, what else do you expect? You know, he's just sick, and his disease is not going to get better, because he's not going to get better because this is love of God and it's incurable. You know, it's there, it will stay with him. He has seen Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when the 6 years passed, and again Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returns to Shantipur. 7 years passed. After 6 years, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was traveling in south, and then he came back to Puri, had Ratha Yatra there, and then he wanted to go to Vrindavan, but he took the route through Bengal, and he came back to Mayapur ultimately. And when Raghunath Das Goswami heard that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is nearby, he fell down flat in front of his father, and he started crying. He said, please, please, my father, I want to see him again. maybe in my whole life I will never see him again. Please allow me to see him. And the father, because father also have seen Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he says, okay, you go. But he gives him 100 people to guard him. And Raghunath Das Goswami says, I swear to you, I will not run away. I just need to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just one more time, only one more time. And when young Raghunath, who is 18 years old or 19 years old at that time, comes to Shantipur and sees Lord Chaitanya again, Lord Chaitanya looks at his face and he immediately knows everything what's going on in his heart. And he points out at him and he says, don't be crazy. Stay at home. Because now you're trying to do it artificially. You're artificially trying to renounce everything. It's not going to work. When the Lord will be pleased with you, now you're trying to force yourself into spiritual life. But actually, you can only receive spiritual life when you obtain the blessings of the Lord. So then everything, you will be released. It's basically, this is another very important teachings for us. You know, Raghunath Das Goswami, he considered his house as a prison, and his wife as a chain and gold and everything. So he really considered the whole situation as hellish as in a prison. And we are all in the prison house of Maya. And sometimes we try to escape, right? Sometimes we think we will escape now, we will give up job, we will go somewhere, we will do. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at that point points out at us and says, don't be crazy. First get the blessings of the Lord. Then the prison house of Maya the doors of the prison house will open themselves. It's like when Vasudeva Maharaj, when he was in prison, and when Krishna was born, and he took his son, little son Krishna, on his lap, on his arms, and he came to the prison opened, and all the guards were sleeping. So in case of Raghunath Das Goswami, exactly the same thing was going on. He was trying to escape, it didn't work. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave him this instruction. He says, it will work when you get the blessings of the Lord. And how you get the blessings of the Lord? You can only get the blessings of the Lord by getting the blessings of the spiritual master. So Raghunath Das Goswami, when he comes back, he doesn't even want to enter the house. Now he sleeps outside. All the time when he was still living at home, he didn't want to enter the house. And his mother became hysterical. She didn't know what to do, how to deal with this boy, and his father gave up already. There's no chance. No chance he will stay at home. So just to please his wife, he was still trying to guard Raghunath, but he knew that sooner or later it will happen. And what happened 1 year after? But when he came back from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he stopped running from the home. He was living outside of house, but he's trying to develop internal detachment. The problem is that we sometimes when we get this initial detachment, we want immediately to express it externally. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, don't do it. I remember in the beginning when the Krishna consciousness movement started in Russia, people were doing crazy things. You know, I very much can relate to this statement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, don't be crazy, because I've seen so many crazy things. One boy who became a devotee, next day he comes to his house, he takes his bus tube and he throws the bus tube out of the balcony. Because this bus tube is his...
What is it?
The bath.
Oh, okay.
Where you, the bathroom, you know.
Yeah.
just throws it out of the balcony because that's his main attachment, his main material attachment. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says you develop some internal spirit of detachment. It's not, it doesn't have to be expressed externally, because when you try to express it externally, it will take some crazy shapes and forms. Try to first develop it, and then everything will be arranged accordingly in your external environment. Actually, the environment we are living in now is the reflection of our inner situation. If the inner situation changes, the external environment also will change. We shouldn't blame the external environment. The external environment is but a reflection of everything which is there internally in our heart. And Raghunath Das Goswami, therefore, he stopped running out of house. And for 1 year he was living very peacefully, but didn't enter the house, of course, but still. And mother was somewhat pacified, and everything was peaceful. And then, of course, this lila comes, which Maharaj announced in the beginning, the Panihati lila, which is an extremely instructive element, or the episode of Raghunath Das Goswami life. He hears that nearby Sri Nityananda Prabhu with his associates are coming. And this is a, madman's party. Nityananda Prabhu's kirtan, crazy kirtan. And Raghunath Das Goswami says, my dear father, can I see and visit this Nityananda Prabhu, who is the associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? And Nityananda Prabhu, still the platform where he was sitting is still there. It's in Panihati, on the bank of Ganga, of the river Ganges. And the kirtan is going on. Nityananda Prabhu is surrounded with his 12 Gopals, his associates who are cowherd boys, and they're having picnic there. Nityananda Prabhu said, I'm a cowherd boy and I like to have picnic on the bank of the river. So they're exchanging, the kirtan was there, they're eating, and then Raghunath Das Goswami is coming from afar and standing humbly and looking at Nityananda Prabhu from far away. And somebody notices him and points out to Nityananda Prabhu, here is Raghunath there praying to you. He's far away. And Nityananda Prabhu looks at him and says, you're a thief. Come here. Why he calls him thief? Because who is the thief? Thief is somebody who wants to steal something which belongs to another owner. What Raghunath Das Goswami, not Das Goswami at that point yet, but just Raghunath, wants to steal, he wants to steal the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Whom lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu belongs to? To Nityananda Prabhu. So he sees him, he points out and says, you're a thief. Because you can only get the treasure of the direct service to the Lord if you get the blessings of the spiritual master. Nityananda Prabhu is the representative of the spiritual master. He has to give you blessings first, and therefore Nityananda Prabhu chastises him jokingly. And Raghunath Das Goswami pays obeisances to him, and he says, you should be duly punished. You have to be punished. You have to be sentenced. No, he didn't say this, because he knows he's already sentenced. He said, you have to feed, tomorrow you have to make a feast for all the Vaishnavas. And there is a lot of Vaishnavas around Nityananda Prabhu. And usually when the feast is there, those who are not Vaishnavas, they also come, especially in India. But funny enough, here is the son of the richest man of the time, who can afford elaborate feast. Nityananda Prabhu says, give them just cheap rice in yogurt and milk. And cheap rice is the cheapest thing which is there. It's the beggar's food. What he actually wants to say by this pastime is that it's not important what you do. You don't have to impress anyone by your quote-unquote devotion. What is important is the heart with which you are doing it. He doesn't say make it elaborate arrangements, 12-course feast. He says give them cheap rice, but to everyone, so that everyone will be pleased. And they have this Panihati festival in the bank of Ganga, you know, where there are rows and rows and thousands of people come. And all the shopkeepers, they know that something is going on, and you know, all the banana sellers and yogurt sellers and cheap rice sellers, they are all there. And Raghunatha Swami says, I'm buying everything, all the supply. Everyone is happy. First, shopkeepers are happy. They must be happy. They must be pleased first. And then all the Vaishnavas are there, and Nityananda Prabhu is there. And Raghunatha Swami very humbly is going in rows, and he just serves prasadam to everyone. Just bananas and yogurt and milk and cheap rice. And everyone is so happy, and everyone is blessing Raghunatha Goswami. And ultimately, Nityananda Prabhu, who is sitting there, he is begging internally in his heart and praying. And he is invoking the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And because Nityananda Prabhu is so powerful, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally comes there and sits next to Nityananda Prabhu. Because when Nityananda Prabhu asked arrangement, he asked, please put 8 pots here. Everyone had 2 pots. 1 pot with yogurt, 1 pot with condensed milk and cheap rice. But Nityananda Prabhu asked 8 pots because he knew Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would come also. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes, and not many people see him. Only closest associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu see or Nityananda Prabhu see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Raghunatha Goswami sees how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in person comes there and eats. And when everything is finished, Nityananda Prabhu waves the hand and calls Raghunath, and he says, here's some remnants. And he gives the remnants of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Raghunath Das Goswami. So, and then the next day, Raghunath Das Goswami comes to Nityananda Prabhu, falls at his feet and says, please bless me. I need your blessings. I want to be near Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I cannot live without this. I cannot live without this goal, without the possibility of seeing him, without being near him. He's so and he's so sincere. And Nityananda Prabhu, he blesses him. He says, he looks at the Vaishnavas and he says, you know, I bless you, and you please all bless Raghunath Das. And of course, the main teaching here is that you can only be released from the prison house of Maya if you get the blessings of the spiritual master and his associates. Spiritual master is never alone. And if you love spiritual master, it means that you have to love his family, his close disciples and friends and everything. Like Krishna. Krishna is never alone. Krishna is always with his, it's Jiva Goswami's comment on Anyabhilasita Shunyam verse, where he says that when we say Krishna, it means all his associates, not just Krishna alone. It means Vrajadam, and it means everything. So Nityananda Prabhu, he he blessed him, and all the associates of Nityananda Prabhu blessed him. And just a few days after, he is released miraculously. But how he is released is also very interesting. Because his initiating spiritual master, Nityananda Prabhu is his Shiksha Guru. His blessings are powerful. But his initiating spiritual master is Yadunandan Acharya, his priest. And his initiating spiritual master is instrumental for his release. What happened in the life of Raghunath Das Goswami, when he came back from this meeting with Nityananda Prabhu and started living as usually, at one point his guru Yadunandan Acharya comes, and it's late at night, and he says, "I need you." He says, "Yes, I'm ready to do something." And he says, "I have a problem, I'm worshipping this deity, and the pujari wants to run away. He doesn't want to listen to me. He doesn't want to do his service. I need you to tell him." It's interesting why Yadunandan Acharya needs Raghunath to tell some pujari to do the service. Oh, because Raghunath is influential, he is rich. And Yad Yad Acharya Tishestas Tatatara Jana, whatever big people says, everyone follows. So he comes to Raghunath and says, "You tell him." And then they're going to this pujari's house, and Raghunath says, "You go home. I will make an arrangement. You don't have to be there." So Yadunandan Acharya goes home, and Raghunath Das thinks, "That's my chance." And nobody saw him in Adi Saptagram since that night. He runs away to Jagannath Puri. And usually it takes 20-25 days to walk to Jagannath Puri. Raghunath Das Goswami, he's running so quickly that it took him only 12 days to reach Jagannath Puri from Adi Saptagram. Within 12 days. And it is said that within these 12 days, he ate only 3 times. He drank some milk. He's running and running and running. That means how he's fixed in his goal. Everything else is pale. Everything else is lifeless. It's like this, when your spirit is awakened, and you look around and you see only dead matter around. You can only feel that you're living when you are in connection with somebody who is living himself, who is not sleeping. Let's say you are somewhere where everyone is sleeping and you're the only one who is awake. And you're going there and everyone is snoring. And you're going there and you're trying to wake them up, but they're all, practically dead. So you want to be with somebody who is also alive. You cannot, it's intolerable for you to be in the situation when everyone is practically dead. So that's what happened with Raghunath Das Goswami. He's running to Jagannath Puri, and he's running there because he knows he will meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu he gets his goal. Because to get the goal, it's not a question. You cannot get the goal from the book. To get the goal, you have to have some experience of the goal. To be really fixed in the goal, you have to experience how it will be when you reach the goal. Otherwise, the goal will not be firmly established. You will never develop the desire to have a Mercedes car unless, or I don't know what is the car popular here or prestigious here, unless you see somebody who is driving this Mercedes car and you look at him and you kind of identify yourself with him. So what I want to say is that to really be fixed in the goal, you have to see somebody who is there in the goal, who already reached the goal, and you can, by seeing him, you can to a certain extent identify with him. This process, Maharaj mentioned the Rasa Shastra and the rules of Rasa Shastra. And actually the Rasa Shastra, how the rasa or the experience is being transmitted, this aesthetic experience, how it is transmitted through the medium of poetry and drama, it is transmitted, one of the important principles is called Sadarani-karan. Sadarani-karan means identification with somebody who is already there. Like when we watch cinema, when we watch some movie, you know, we actually forget who we are. We literally become the hero of the movie, you know, and we experience, to a certain extent, experience what he is experiencing. So what I want to say is that why Raghunath Das Goswami was so fixed in the goal, because he saw the manifestation, the living manifestation of the goal in the person of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And therefore he wanted to be there, because he knew that when I go back, you know, I may listen all these nice lectures and this and that, and I may even get the experience, but then it becomes again little hazy and, you know, not so strong. But he says, I'm not yet fixed with the goal. I need to see and to reconfirm that this is my goal again and again and again. And that's why in the initial stages of our spiritual development, it's very important to associate with people who are more advanced. Because by associating with them, we kind of, we understand more than just we understand on a logical level. It's not the logical, rational message which we get from their lips when they speak, but we get much more. And that's why it's so important to see them in person and not just to use the impersonal media of YouTube, you know. YouTube sadhu sangha is not enough. It may not be bad, but still it's not the same. You really have to feel what they feel. You really have to feel the vibration which is there. And then only the goal will become relevant to you. If you just read the book, you may say, yeah, it's nice, nice people, cool people. But it's not your goal. My goal is to have Mercedes car. Because this is what I can relate to. I cannot really relate to all this lofty stuff, you know, which is there, love God, who needs it? So that's exactly what Raghunath Das Goswami is teaching us. He says, I want to be with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even though I cannot speak with him. He lived, you know, 17 or 16 years near Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He hardly spoke with him few times during this 16 and 17 years. As Maharaj was explaining, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was already in his, you know, last stage. He was in Nirjan Bhajan. He hardly saw anyone at that time. But still, he was nearby. And he saw people who saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was under the direct guidance of Swarup Damodar. And actually, every night Swarup Damodar Goswami would spend with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Raghunath Das Goswami was in his ashram. Swarup Damodar Goswami, he was living in the Saptarishi road, nearby the temple, near Gambhira and near the Siddha Baku, little further away towards the shore, seashore of Jagannath Puri, closer to Svargadvar. And they were all living Swarup Damodar. So Raghunath Das Goswami, every night, he was waiting for Swarup Damodar to come back from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he couldn't sleep. And, you know, Swarup Damodar would spend half of the night or bigger portion of the night with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, telling him singing the songs about Krishna. And Raghunath Das Goswami, he couldn't sleep, he was meditating on this. What's going on? And when Swarup Damodar Goswami would come, he would ask him, what was there? In which mood Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was? What mood he was relishing at that time? Which verses he was meditating upon, and what was the mood? And in this way he was receiving the same mood as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore he is the Prayojanacharya. He is the Prayojanacharya because he directly received this mood from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as I said, a couple of times he met personally with Raghunath Das Goswami, and he gave him personal instructions, which I want to tell you, which is very important for all of us because our topic is the goal, how to reach the goal. And even though it's only 2 verses, 2 short Bengali verses which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him, but these 2 verses, they encapsulate the essence of the whole spiritual life, the essence of the whole spiritual practice and how to reach the goal. Simple thing. Sometimes, you know, we try to make, I don't know how, I'm speaking about myself, sometimes because I have a complicated mind, I have a scientific background, therefore
welcome to New York.
So sometimes I need to make simple things complicated, but ultimately, so therefore I feel so at home.
Yeah.
Anyway, so when Raghunath Das Goswami was living for some time in Jagannath Puri, he of course met with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he came initially after 12 days of running and not eating, completely, you know, only eyes were burning. He was skinny, he lost his weight, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very kindly received him, and he gave him to Swarup Damodar, and he said he will personally instruct you how to reach the goal. Because actually to reach the goal is very difficult. The goal in, here is difficult part comes. The goal according to Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta is to, first of all, completely demolish our material identity, which is so strongly established within us. We have so many layers of our identity. I am this and that, cultural layers, all these layers of karma, of layers of conditioning. We're so conditioned. We don't know how much we are conditioned. You know, so many layers after layers after layers, all these impressions which we accumulated over many, many lifetimes. All these samskaras which are there, sometimes deep. And many times we don't know about the samskaras because they are in subconscious mind. You go to a psychotherapist and he starts to undig this, and you know, all of a sudden you remember something which you forgot, and it's such a strong samskara within your personality. So you have to, and all this is recorded in your brain. Your brain has 80 billion neurons, and each one of these 80 billion neurons can be connected with 2,000 other neurons. The number of connections which are there in our brain is more than the number of the atoms in this universe. In every human brain there is more connections, and this all connections is basically the information layer, the information which you accumulated over many lifetimes. It's all there, it's all memorized. You think it's simple to be born in New York in 1965 or 86 or whatever it is. No. There is a lot of calculation has been going on in the universal computer to bring you in a proper place and according to your karma with the proper environment and everything. So you have, first of all, you have to erase your material identity, and on the top of it you have to recreate or create your spiritual identity. How difficult it is. It's not so easy. And therefore you need personal association with people, and you need so many other conditions. And Raghunath Das Goswami, he starts living there, and even though Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was directly told him, you go to Swarup Damodar and Swarup Damodar will teach you everything, he still has some doubts. You know, we all know this psychology, human psychology. I need to be instructed only by the top guy. If it's some other bhakta, only Mahabhagavata can instruct me. And of course, nothing else will work, we know, because we're so stubborn. So. But anyway, even Raghunath Das Goswami to a certain extent had this mentality. So once he approached Swarup Damodar Goswami and he said, can you bring me to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? I want to ask him questions. And Swarup Damodar Goswami agrees, and he brings Raghunath Das Goswami to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Raghunath Das Goswami humbly pays obeisances and then humbly asks, how do I reach the goal? Could you explain to me how to reach the goal? And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he laughs, he smiles, he says, I don't know. I told you to learn everything from Swarup Damodar. He knows much better than I. But if you want my instructions, then I will give you. And that's what I wanted to finish the lecture with, the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He gives basically 5, 6 different instructions. Very simple, but at the same time very profound. First thing he says, Gramya Katha na sunibe. Don't hear rumors. Don't hear gossip. Don't go to the internet. Because this is where Gramya Katha is now, found its place. Because internet is such a rumor mill. It's just, it's all. First instruction. Why? Because when you hear all the time, and we have special taste for all this Gramya Katha, for all this gossip, what's going on. And now, of course, Gramya Katha, now they say that the whole world is just one village. Gramya Katha literally means village talk. And during Raghunath Das Goswami, village was village. Now the whole world is a village. And the village talk is through this, through this internet, through this net of, the web, or how it's called. And now you get the news from all over Monica Lewinsky, whatever was there. Yeah. all this stuff. And you know, how you're going to clean your mind if you always fill it up with all this garbage? It's a huge, it's garbage. There's so much garbage is there. And we have the affinity to this garbage. We are attracted to this garbage. We like this garbage. And you know, we get it again and again and again. So how we're supposed to, we chant 16 rounds and the rest of the day we just listen Gramya Katha. So what this 16 rounds of Hare Krishna mantra can do? Therefore his first instruction, Gramya Katha na shunibi. And then the next instruction, Gramya Katha na kahibe. Don't repeat this. Which is even more disturbing, because this all this news, material news, they disturb our mind. But then when we repeat it, and we repeat it by adding there some spice of our own, you know. We repeat it with you know, we add our own garbage to this garbage. And we reinforce our garbage by repeating this, you know. We're more or less, as I said, the first thing we have to layer by layer get rid of all this material heritage which we have, karmic heritage. But how we can hope to do it if we always do this strange things? Therefore he says, Gramya Katha na kahibe, Gramya Katha na shunibi, Gramya Katha na kahibe. Don't repeat this. Don't, because when we repeat, and again, I don't know about you, but I know very well about myself. When you repeat something about, especially some bad news, and basically all the news in this world are bad news. There's no good news. There's hardly any good news. It's all bad. It's all negative. And then when you repeat this bad news about somebody, then you add the spice of your envy by repeating this. You're adding some envy into the whole thing. And you're more or less reinforcing the envy in yourself. And it's the first instruction of Srimad Bhagavatam, Paramonir Matsaranam Satam. You can only understand something about Krishna if you are nirmatsar, if you don't have envy within your heart. And therefore, it's so important not to speak this, because we will never be able to get rid of this envious nature of ours, or this competitive nature which is there in us. It will only be again and again reinforced by all this sadhana of repeating the worldly news. But why do we want to speak about this? Because it's so nice, it's such a nectar to speak about. It's this Ninda Katha. Ninda Katha means the Katha of blaspheming others. It's a nectar, it's Amrita. Of course, it's a joke. If you didn't understand. And then he says, don't eat very rich food, don't try to show up by putting nice clothes, because again you are kind of, you know, trying to show up your material identity, or you blow up your pride by all this stuff, and you're getting disturbed. To do bhajan, you have to be concentrated. The mind should be clear, should be clean. Srila Prabhupada says this in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. He says that you know, to worship God, you have to have clean mind. To have clean mind, you have to have clean food, because food is the it transmits the energy which is there, and if it's tamasic, then it's not, your mind cannot be concentrated. Your mind will be distracted. We all know, we sit to meditate on Krishna and 2 milliseconds later we're meditating on something else. We had this determination, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. But before we finish one mantra, we're already thinking about something else. Because we have 80 billion neurons. And they all want to talk with each other. Neurons are, they're chatting with each other constantly in our head. And therefore, he said, don't be proud. And then this is the next instruction. Don't be proud. Amani manada. And respect everyone. Why? Again, because only in this way you will be peaceful. If you're proud and if you don't respect other people, if you're always envious about other people and you're disrespectful, the mind will always be disturbed. No way. And then then 2 more instructions. Simple. First, don't spread this Gramya-katha, don't hear, don't speak, don't eat too rich food, and respect everyone, be peaceful in this way, and not expect any respect means basically also whatever happens with you, you accept it gratefully. Humility and gratitude is the same thing. You cannot be grateful if you're proud. When you're proud, you cannot really express gratitude. But when you're humble, you're ready to say thank you to everyone and to be grateful. This is all the rules to how to make your mind peaceful. And then he says, chant Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
And if you chant Hare Krishna in this mind, completely concentrated, that immediately you will have an experience. That Hare Krishna mantra will change your consciousness in itself because you are concentrated on the sound of Hare Krishna mantra. Because it has the power. And when we are distracted, then it loses its power, and especially when we are offensive, when we are proud and therefore offensive, and not respectful to others. And then he says, and then the last instruction, always think about Radha and Krishna in your heart. Yeah, that's the ultimate instruction, that's the goal. But you can only do this if you follow this whole procedure. You can only really think about Radha and Krishna in your heart if you follow all these other instructions and chant the holy name in a humble state of mind. And then when you chant Hare Krishna and think about Radha and Krishna, you will not be in this world, you will be in the spiritual world. By the means of this lila, you will be transported there. And of course, this is a little pastime which I will tell and finish the whole thing. This pastime happened when Dhanurdhara Goswami already went to Vrindavan, and he was meditating on Radha and Krishna, and once he became really sick, and he was eating little buttermilk every second day, and he became sick, and Vitalnath Acharya, very influential Vaishnava of the day, son of Vallabhacharya, who was very good friend with Raghunath Das Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami sometimes would stay in his home, and they were good friends. He was nearby, and all the Vaishnavas became concerned because Raghunath Das Goswami became very sick, he's already elderly, and they called Vitalnath. And Vittelnath also saw his condition, that he's breathing heavily. They thought maybe he's dying. So he called a very good Kaviraj, Ayurvedic doctor. And when Ayurvedic doctor came and started taking pulse of Raghunath Das Goswami, he said, yeah, everything is clear. He ate too much sweet rice. He's completely bloated. And that's why it's heavy, I'll give him some medicine, it will be gone. Just take this medicine, little ginger, this and that, and you will digest it easily. And everyone says, it's not possible. He eats only little buttermilk every second day. No, he said, he completely bloated it. It's just, it's not good to overeat. And then they asked Raghunath Goswami himself, he says, yes, that's true. In my meditation, I ate too much sweet rice because it was the remnants of Radha and Krishna. And ginger helped, somehow or other it digested sweet rice which he ate. Be there, serve there, be present there, which is the goal. If your mind is clean, and to have a clean mind, it's not an easy job in this day and age, but we have to try. We even come little closer to this goal. Even if the heart will become little more clean, we will already become.
We can take a couple of questions, and then Colorado.
Hey, I don't mind mine. Is this Bengali language? Because like my question is it the same thing as Prajalpa? Like is it?
It's the same thing as Prajalpa, but it's more specific because there are so many kinds of Prajalpa. But Gramya Katha is specifically village talk, which is gossip. He said this and she said this and they did this and then all this Whenever we go, we always, hear. I sometimes hear such an interesting facts about myself that I'm always intrigued.
Yeah.
I get just one, right? Artificial renunciation. Yeah, but when he did approach that second time, it's genuine, sincere. So
between his internal state of our mind, conscious mind. congruent or in harmony with whatever is there in the subconscious mind. So when he says you develop something internally, some internal thing, it basically means that still there is some work which has to be done to bring it on par, to bring it on the same level. Consciously we believe in something, but subconsciously what actually matters is what is there in our subconsciousness.
Like there's
job which we have to do. This is a very important thing, and that's exactly what is the meaning, because otherwise you will do something artificially for the show's sake. Because we already have this tendency to project something about us to the external world without having this in reality, because we just want to present ourselves in such a way or this and that. So it's very important to have this inner integrity, and that's that.
I don't know if I heard this part right, but when Raghunath Goswami went to Lord Chaitanya, that for the sake of instructing us, that Lord Chaitanya actually kind of completed and did give, because Lord Chaitanya or Krishna, he wants us to understand that, you come to me through my devotee. So I'm surprised that he actually accommodated his desire, and for the sake of our instruction, didn't make him go through Swami Dhanurdhara.
That generally psychology which is behind this idea, I want to go to somebody who will teach me very esoteric thing, is that he will say to me some secret which others don't know. And he goes to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, don't listen, Gosu, which is a very simple instruction. So, if I don't know the intention, but that's at least one possible way to answer this question, is that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu still teaches, even if you go to whoever, high up you go, he will teach you the same thing which you have to follow on your level of advancement. He will not open to you some esoteric secrets which you are not ready to receive anyway. So, and he will tell you the same thing. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, yeah, I will tell you the same thing which Swami Dhamma, I will tell you anyway.
Third question?
Yeah, I do. I have.
Okay.
Yeah. When I didn't think I was going to get it, so. Oh yeah. Lord Chaitanya came here as his devotee, his own devotee. So, getting when Raghunath Das Goswami saw that he was riding the Mercedes, he got the association of somebody who had achieved the goal. So does that mean that his perception of Lord Chaitanya was as a devotee of Krishna, not as Krishna himself? What was his perception actually of Lord Chaitanya?
Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami very interestingly says, he actually says something on behalf of Raghunath Das Goswami, even though Raghunath Das Goswami didn't say it, but he says within his heart Raghunath Das Goswami thought. So when they met with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu third time in Jagannath Puri, when Raghunath Das Goswami ran away from home and came to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Krishna has released you from this prison of Maya. It's because of the mercy of Krishna you are here with us. And Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he writes, at that time, Raghunath Das Goswami thought within his heart. He didn't speak it out loud. He said, I don't know Krishna, but I know your Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you released me from the prison. So his understanding was, of course, you know, he knew because it was Swarup Damodar Goswami who revealed the identity of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to the world in his Kadachas, and definitely Raghunath Das Goswami would study his diary, from where Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami got his whole concept of the identity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But at the same time, whoever you are, you released me. You know, you say it's Krishna, but I know it's you. If you're Krishna or not, I don't know Krishna, but I know you. That was his attitude, at least in the beginning. That's how it is expressed in Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Okay, one more question. Yeah, go ahead.
In our day-to-day lives, we so often have to hear Prajapa, this or that type of talk, for various reasons, for various lengths of time, etc., etc. Even in our, oftentimes, even in what we call our devotional practice, our, you know, sadhana, whatever, bhajana, how can we know or avoid material contaminations or material coverings of our sadhana?
Yeah, it's almost inevitable every now and then to hear this stuff, but perhaps one advice in this regard is just don't take it so seriously, because usually when we hear especially some negative things, we really believe it and we take it deep into our heart and we start repeating it without, you know, rehearsing it and then speaking it. So even if you hear, just, you know, just you have 2 ears, put it in one ear and put it out from another one. You know, just conveniently 2 ears are given to you for your convenience. Try not to, because it's one thing to hear, another thing is to meditate about it, on it, to dwell on it, and, you know, to think about it again and again and again. So it's sometimes difficult, especially when, because again, we have this envy in the heart, and these rumors sometimes ignite this spark of envy which is there, and therefore, you know, we tend to think about it. But if we notice this phenomenon, at least be conscious about this and try to get rid of it as much as possible. Chant some little, you know, Hare Krishna to get rid of this contamination. Or at least look at the sun. They say it helps because sun is purifying, so whatever is there. Of course, in New York sometimes it's difficult to see sun because of skyscrapers.
Maharaj, I'd like to finish with a poem.
Okay.
It's called Enter Not.
Enter not.
Enter Not rather than Internet. It's by Communists everywhere, invasion on a grand scale, too much information too quick. Check your head when you check your email. They come disguised as friends and well-wishers. You've never had less time to think. The fruit of man's progress looks good on the surface, but inside it's toxic and stinks. If I give in, and I hope that I don't, I'll log on to forgiveme.com. But until then, you'll find me on the run from the fallout of the .commie bombs.
Is that Majan?
Yes.
Okay. While they're setting up, Mitchell, lead another kirtan for about 5 minutes, and Tota, you can play the kartan. Maharaj, thank you so much.
Wow.
thank you for coming. I'd like to thank Dhanurdhara Maharaj, Bhakti Vijnana Maharaj for speaking. We'd also like to welcome Padmanabha Maharaj, visiting from Argentina. So I know it's warm in here, but there's a good reason we're ready to serve out prasad. So we're going to do it buffet style. So we can just kind of circle around the table, and then people can sit where they are.
Thank you, Auntie.
Yes, thank you.
I'll take it. Hey, no problem.
Yeah, that's great.
And you sit in the front, you're so
Thanks, Auntie. He was talking about the right.